we do a little hair check. Lost a little bit this week, but not too bad.
Looks good. No, it looks good. It looks fantastic.
Well, Will, you look great. It's great to see you again. It's probably been a year and a half since the last time we spoke.
It's been a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on your show again.
Yeah, so it's kind of a second time, kind of inaugural. We're under a new title, a new name. I got a new co-host. Not as good looking as the last, but
okay.
This is what you get in corrections.
That's right. I think I know who your co-host is, and scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Well, it's just that's how we interview here.
Right. Oh.
Why are you so sweaty?
What?
Why are you so sweaty?
I just ran up here, dude.
You don't
There's
run.
so many stairs.
Well, we are on the third floor, yeah.
Yeah, why? I didn't know where we were going to be at today.
Wherever they put us.
My God. Another office, another day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, how are you, buddy?
Joe, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to see you again. I missed you.
It's nice to see you. You guys sitting next to each other look like the before and after uniform inspection. Are we in the guidelines of the grooming policy? And this is a neat comparison.
You can't really see with his dark colors where his beard stops and his clothing starts.
His
we're
girth.
gonna have to put like a green screen shirt on him or something.
I put extra oils on today just for you today.
Oils.
Just for you.
It reminds me of the meme that you see when the guy says, "Hey, I'm 25 years old and I've been in corrections for 6 months." I mean, this is looking at you guys looks like a before and an after corrections photo. So you figure out
who's the before and after.
Time out.
We might be inversed on your screen.
No, I think Dr. Luke, I think, is clearly the gentleman who took some time preparing for today, prepping his image, cares about how he looks, what people think about him, and then Boba Fett rolls in late, and here we go. So this is what short staffing gets you.
You're like, he's spot on. He might be in the health profession.
I feel like I look very professional today. This is professional, Joe.
You do.
I don't have my beanie hat on. Your hair smells amazing. I'll tell you that. Like, if you can smell him right now, it is on point.
I wish I could smell. I wish I could smell him. Yes.
So, welcome everyone to our podcast.
So this is kind of the first official content episode, but the second episode of the Fourth Shift Mind Body Badge with yours truly, Luke, and
Joe,
partner in crime,
Joe, Dr. Luke, Sergeant Valentine, however you want to address us, or V with Bill,
or the hair and the beard, as we're being called now.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So we have an awesome guest already with us today. Why don't you let us know who's on the other side of this wall?
We got William Young here, everybody. A lot of you guys who might not know him, he is a podcaster. He is an influencer. He is an author.
What is an influencer, by the way? That always is he a Kardashian?
No, he has a following of correctional officers who, on a national level, he helps them every single day. Provides
he's like
advice.
A correctional influencer.
Yeah, I mean, a correctional influencer.
I love that. Love it. We need a few more of those.
Yeah.
I'm speechless. I don't know. That's the worst. That's literally the worst introduction I've ever had from anybody. And Luke, I can't believe you put Joe in charge of that. So thank you.
Well, you had a busy week, and you try to throw a softball lob over the plate to get some get some street cred with him, and this is what you get. So this is why I don't delegate. I just do it myself anymore.
You have to sometimes.
Now I got nothing to say. I was all excited about seeing you two today and talking to you and talking about social wellness, which is the topic, and now it's just a barrage of insults right now.
Well, but this does show a good point. This is often how males, and again, we have a lot of females and other genders that work for us in correctional settings, so I'm not trying to put down anybody else, but this is often how males kind of, with razzing each other, that back and forth is often how we do show kind of camaraderie. If somebody's not poking at you a little bit, they probably don't like you.
Yeah.
They hate you.
Is it the same way out in Nebraska?
No, it is. That's how I on my my platform, my podcast. This is how I show people that I love them. I love Joe so much that anytime I talk to him or get to see him, I try to make him feel as bad about himself as possible, and that's that's how I show it, and it works. You can ask my kids. I do the same thing to my kids, and I'll tell you what, they really appreciate brutal honesty, a constant sarcasm. It's been great for their self-esteem and for how they get along in public.
So you're like a reverse psychologist.
Correct. I'm the anti Dr. Luke.
Anti-villain here. So what's new with you going on in Nebraska? Why we have you?
Not much. I just got back. I was in South Carolina earlier this week, Monday. I presented at their conference.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was good. It was their annual conference, and I presented on mental wellness and why their mental wellness program will fail if they do certain things like we always do in corrections. I also presented that here this morning in Omaha as well. And yeah, so I was contacted. They said, hey, we do a piece on officer wellness, on mental wellness. And I feel like we all kind of talk about the same thing over and over and over again. But the reality is that there are roles that both admin and frontline staff have to play in the morale, in retention, and all of that. And if we continue to do things the way that we've always done them, then we might as well not even get out of bed. We might as well not even try it. And so I like to give them that frontline perspective and say, hey, we have to change the culture here in corrections. We have to start talking about this mental health thing. We have to start taking this seriously because the stakes are too high not to. So yeah, that was my week. I had a crazy layover in Detroit at their airport. I spent 4 hours. This is the first time I ever took my wife with me traveling. And it was the worst traveling experience ever. 4 hour layover in Detroit, 4 hour layover in Atlanta, getting into South Carolina at 1 o'clock in the morning, walking 2 miles in the dark to some van somewhere that I rented. It was just terrible. It was terrible. So she'll probably never go again. So,
yeah, I know the travel industry's been really tough, short staffed, all the stuff that pretty much every workplace is dealing with, but becomes pretty inconvenient when you're trying to do a nonstop flight and then you get rerouted and you travel.
Right.
You pay a lot of money to be there on time and you barely make it.
Right. Yeah. I was laid over in Montana a couple of weeks ago. My flight was pushed back 4 hours for weather, and there was literally no weather anywhere. It was the most beautiful day I've ever seen. I checked the connecting, going to Denver. Denver was beautiful. Everything. There was like no weather. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? But it gave me some time to walk around the one terminal of the Montana airport. So that was pretty awesome.
So question just for the viewers who is watching this right now.
Sure.
So they know a little bit more about you.
Both of them, both viewers.
Both viewers, yeah.
Right.
How long have you been a part of corrections? And what made you come to realization that you needed to talk and reach out to newer staff and the veteran staff?
So, two-part question.
Two-part
Let me
question.
break it down.
Part one.
When did you start in corrections? So how long you been in there?
Yeah.
And then when did this kind of journey of wellness, realizing I got to share my story, I've got to get this message out?
I've been in corrections for 3 weeks, and no, I joined the Department of Corrections in 2005, March of 2005. So I'm coming up to my 18th year. If you count the time like our inmates count the time, I'm at 18 already, and I had a pretty good run. It wasn't until about 2016-ish, 2017 that the job started catching up with me. And that I started noticing changes in my personal life that I had no explanation for. Like my relationship with my wife is solid. My kids aren't, hooligans. Everything was good outside of the profession, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I had to take a deep look at myself and a look at what the things that I've seen, that I've witnessed, that I've been a part of throughout my time in corrections, what it does to people and what it can do to us if we don't know it. And my big thing is that we're in a fight every day, and it's not a physical fight. It's a mental fight. It's an emotional fight, spiritual fight. And we don't even know that we're fighting it. We're not even told that we're fighting the battle. And you cannot win a battle, a war, a fight that you don't know that you're fighting. And that was what was happening to me. I was directing my anger at the wrong places, and I was starting to not function very well outside as a member of society. I was still good inside. I was a rock star inside. But I just really noticed it outside with my interactions.
So you had kind of adapted to that work setting, which happens with a lot of folks with trauma. I also do some work with veterans and do a lot of PTSD assessments and obviously staff wellness assessment, other mental health. They adapt to that setting pretty well, right? You know, your sort of radar gets honed into what's going on in your environment, but you don't readapt to kind of being a civilian, right, a father, a husband, a friend very well. You adapt to kind of where the danger is, not where the danger isn't. So was there a kind of an aha moment where not like, oh, I suspect, I'm changing a little bit, but like, wow, this is not the Will that I knew 15 years ago. I got to do something about this.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I mean, my wife had made some comments and we were kind of getting into some arguments, for lack of a better word, for no reason. And I wasn't sure what was going on. Looking back, understanding now, I know that because I was operating in such a hypervigilant state all the time, when I wasn't at work, when I didn't have that adrenaline, when I didn't have those things happening, my body was craving it. I was like in clinical depression. I'm trying to seek out that adrenaline. But anyways, that's for another show. But she basically said, you're no good with people anymore. You have to figure it out. And as if that wasn't good enough, a couple of days later, an inmate at work told me the same thing. I used to make my rounds and talk and interact with these guys. And I basically told one to pound sand one night when he asked me a question. And then the following evening, he came up to me and said, hey, man, are you okay? And I'm like, well, of course I'm okay. I mean, why are you asking me? And he said, well, because last night, I've known you for years. Last night you came through. You weren't the same you that you were that I know, that I've talked to for years. And I said, well, whatever, dude, kick rocks. And then I looked at it and I said, man, my wife kind of said the same thing. And now the population is kind of seeing the same thing. Should I look into what's happening to me? And that was kind of the moment where I said, all right, let me see what's going on. Maybe there is something to this, correctional thing that I need to look at.
Yeah. So really people inside the walls and outside the walls both noticed a change in you.
Right.
My kids, they were the first who saw the change in me. It was to the point, like we've talked about before, Bill, that they just walk on eggshells when it comes to engaging with me, when it comes to talking to me. I know I've said it to you before and I'll say it again. His book, When the Home Becomes a Housing Unit, that he wrote, I tell everyone who I meet who works in corrections to read this book and check out this book. I was working third shift one night. I read it. I got home the next day. I read it with my wife and just cried. She cried, made me cry, because reading it again with her really opened my eyes of how I was treating my family outside the walls when the home becomes a housing unit. And she just broke it down for me. And every time I read a line, every sentence, almost every chapter, it was, that's you. You do that. You engage like that.
Right.
And that was my aha moment was William Young's book when it came to how I needed to adapt and really think about how the job has changed me in corrections.
Yeah, interesting story. So some people who know me or listen to our last iteration of the podcast know that I'm kind of a corrections brat. Grew up in corrections, second generation. Shout out to my nephew in the academy. Third generation of our family in corrections. I guess prisons have given us a decent way to live and, pay our bills. But so I grew up with that. And so those things that you're talking about, the kids and the eggshells and that anxiety that kind of your family kind of interprets and internalizes from, how father acts or mother acts when they come home by trying to kind of like overly control this environment that doesn't really need it. because you can't overly
Right.
control or trying to overly control that environment at work makes you safer. And so all those people around you kind of adapt, and they get to a point to where they can't adapt anymore. And it causes a lot of blow ups and friction in the family. And like Will said, this isn't something that happens in your first year. Sometimes it could happen shortly after a major event. Sometimes you may never have one critical event, but just the daily grind of that
Right.
stress adds up. You know, I'd love to see some research as this, it's kind of like couples counseling, right? There's just these trends of certain years that tend to be more difficult, whether that's like year 5, year 10, year 15, year 20, that happen. I'm sure we'd probably see that. Tough thing to study, but yeah.
You know, we've
What-
talked about it before. The job doesn't mentally prepare us for what we're going
Right.
to go through behind the walls, right? We know that we can deal with something bad at work, something can happen, something can pop off physically. But that mental abuse, that mental draining, we really don't know what that's going to be like. And I know my first year or two in, I never thought anything about it. And it wasn't until year kind of 3 for me came, and 4 and 5. And then my wife was kind of like, yeah, you just went downhill with how you handle
Right.
things. So go ahead, Bill.
No, I was going to touch on what Luke said, and you know, it's difficult to study that kind of stuff because everybody's threshold is different. All
Yeah.
the things that we see is different, and when you put people in a pressure cooker, when you put them in stressful situations, some people thrive and some people crumble, and and that's why it's so hard, and this environment is so difficult to train, to teach, to prepare for, is because just because I can make it 18 years, just because I can see some of the things that I've seen, doesn't mean that anybody else can. And so as a culture, we kind of put those unfair expectations on people and say, hey, this is just part of the job. You should just be able to do that. And we don't give them any skills or any tools or coping mechanisms to actually handle that stuff after the call. We train them very well to do the job. We train them very well to respond to the alarms. It's just what happens afterwards. And
Same
like
thing
you,
with the military. I see the
Yeah.
same thing, Will, where we do a really good job, tons of research on how we train them to adapt to combat situations. There's very little training, and it takes so much more work for your brain to adapt back to non-work, non-civilian, non-whatever, or non-military type of life. We've seen studies since, I think, 2019, the last one came out, that was saying a lot of our correctional officers in the United States were seeing higher rates of PTSD per capita,
yep,
even more than Iraq and Afghanistan vets returning, who had a very high number, right? So it's just kind of an odd setting because we go from some moments being entirely sedentary and bored to tears to extreme danger and excitement, and not a lot of in between. And even when it is boring and things do feel safe, you're never further than arm's length from danger, right?
right.
Did everybody who's in prison commit a crime? We don't know, right? We weren't the judge, jury, the prosecutor, all of that. But by and large, those people in there have been convicted of a felony, right? So there's danger. And anytime we get a congregate setting with that many people in close quarters, no matter of their criminal histories, things can get pretty aggressive and tough. And we are the ones left managing that, not with a bunch of fancy tools, but with what's between our ears.
Right. Right. And that's what's difficult. And that's what I think people have a hard time understanding is because we're, you know, like when you talk about being in a war zone, right? You're submerged in the war zone. You do your deployment, your 9-10 months or whatever, and then you come back. And acclimation is tough, but there is a step down process. And when you do get home, you know that the danger's over and that you can try to get help. But for us, we never leave our war zone. We work there 12, 16 hours a day. We come right back in. And the thing I've read about police officers, correctional officers versus even firefighters is firefighters have a distinct start and stop to their situations, to their emergencies. The bell goes off, the call goes off, they run, they handle their business, and then it's done. The person's at the hospital, the person's rescued, the house is burnt down, whatever it is. But we don't. We're trained to look for the potential problems or things that could go wrong And so that's how we start to look at the world. And so we never shut that off. And so we don't ever have a chance to really decompress, with it, to step out of that war zone for a little bit, to come down. I mean, people listening, people watching this can say, when you guys take off an extended period of time, 4 days, 5 days, 10 days off, you can at the end of that start to feel like, holy smokes, I feel like rested. I feel normal. I feel like, you're like starting to enjoy life again. But on the normal day-to-day grind, we don't get that time. We don't get enough time between shifts, between incidents, to come down, to relax, to reacclimate to normal life. And I think that's the big difference between, military and corrections. And I've even had some guys that were vets that say, look, my time inside is harder than it was overseas, just because they knew what the mission was over there, and they were there and they were involved. And like you said, we're kind of programmed to we're always waiting for this danger to happen. And then we bring that outside with us. And and I've told this to Joe before, and I say it 100 times, but the problem is that the skills that they teach us to survive inside don't work so well on the outside. We start to judge, we start to size up the inmates inside. How would we take this person down? How would we solve this problem if this happens? Well, we start to do that with our neighbors too after a few years, and that's the problem. And that's what people don't recognize is happening until it's causing problems in their personal life.
Yeah, when I'm working with vets, we'll get halfway through a session or whatever, and a lot of them say, "Are you sure you're not a veteran?" "Well, I'm not really sure." "Yeah, I would know." Well, they're like, "Well, you just get this stuff." And I say, "Well, I do work in corrections." They say, "Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense."
Right.
And some of the stuff that really helps those folks kind of understand is when we provide kind of a biological model and understanding, because this isn't white knuckling. This isn't people choosing to feel and act and react in their environment this way. This is stuff that's like automatically unconscious processing that happens through repetition and kind of behavioral training. There's an area in our brain called the limbic system, and two main parts of that limbic system are kind of activated during like the stress and trauma at work. The hippocampus, which controls a lot of our emotions and helps with memory. And then the amygdala, which is right next to that really controls fear, stimulus, and response. So we will see those spots, like the hippocampus sometimes will atrophy with PTSD. So it gets a little smaller, but then it will be overactive, right? And the amygdala starts to kind of get twisted on what it sees as fear, right? So, sometimes it's very overactive, and other times it's just, it misses easy signals. So, it's like if you tore your shoulder, playing baseball, we can't expect you to go out on the mound the next day and throw 90-mile-an-hour heaters, right? You have to go to rehab. You have to strengthen that area up. You have to ice. You have to rest. But we don't give our minds like the same grace we give our shoulders, our knees, our backs. You know what I mean? So the only thing I could say about kind of reacclimating is every day when you come off of those housing units, those yards, wherever, the towers, by acclimating yourself and, practicing meditation to kind of teach the mind how to get back to a homeostasis that's more appropriate, and kind of being an active observer in your environment and purposely and consciously seeking out things and challenging kind of the level of danger, the emotional attachment to that thing. Because if you don't, and the thing that we'll always see, and I see with veterans, they usually come in by the time their wife say, "I've had too much." I've dealt with this 10, 15 years. I understand you put your time in, but this is killing me. And they'll be at dinner, right? Can't sit at the seat that the wife wants to in the restaurant because we have to have our backs in the right spot, see everything. Yep. We're hyper vigilant. The wife's telling you about her day, right? Or something that's going on with her mother, her friend. Very important stuff. That's a really important part of a relationship to share. And what are you doing? Scanning.
Right.
And you look at your wife as kind of foolish for sharing that emotional information. It's like, you don't know who's here. You don't know if that's safe. How are you being so foolish to sit here and relax while I am trying to like read threats and keep us safe? And this stuff is happening in your brain so fast. It's just automatic. It's just like recognizing a color on the wall and saying red.
I mean, it was to the point when I just stopped communicating to my wife. Just straight stopped. I stopped reaching out to my friends. I stopped reaching out to my family.
Wow.
Because I was so, and I know we all handle corrections differently. I was so overwhelmed at the beginning that if I felt like if I did say, hey, Luke, or hey, Will, I need to talk to you guys, I didn't know you. I didn't know you.
Right.
What are you guys going to say about me if I do say, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I can't focus when my wife is talking. I can't spend time with my kids because I'm just thinking about work all the time. And then you worry about the rumors that start coming out of it. You know, what have we talked about in the past? When one shark sees that you're weak, what does everyone else do? Just start attacking you. And that moment of saying, I might need help, I might need to be talking about something, everyone attacks. You know, and that was the biggest thing that I personally struggled with when I first started IDOC.
I think we're trying to flip that script in IDOC. You know?
Absolutely.
So Staff Wellness has been around for about 5 years here, give or take. It sort of had some earlier iterations that weren't called SWRT, and it's kind of evolved. And every year we kind of add something to the repertoire, but we weren't around. You know, my father, the folks who started in corrections years ago, they didn't have this stuff. So we've got our challenge is finding like an organic way to weave ourselves in there, and then helping our folks, you know, in uniform get over those hurdles and talking about it, normalizing those things. And we do see instances where it's happening, but it's a pretty slow process.
Yeah.
What I think is crazy is that we don't have any problem asking each other for help in the physical sense, right? Like if I needed to go drag a guy out of a cell or put a guy back in a cell that didn't want to go, I'd have no problem asking you guys to help me, you know, and you would enjoy helping me. You'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Right. But like you talked about, Joe, you didn't feel comfortable saying, hey, my head's not in the right place. Hey, that inmate threatened to kill me. And for some reason, this feels a little bit different than the other 200 that have threatened to kill me, and I'm not doing so well with it. We get weird at that point, and that's really why, you know, I get frustrated with officers when we talk about really any problem that's brought forth, and they're like, well, administration needs to do this, and they should have done this, and staffing that, and it's like, well, hang on a second. We're not supporting each other the way that we should. We're all in this fight together. You know, the things that Luke just talked about with the brain and how the brain reacts, a lot of that stuff is uncontrollable. It just happens. And so when you're talking fight, flight, freeze, you're talking about somebody seeing something they've never had in their whole life happen in front of them, they don't know how to react. Those are all teaching moments. Those are all times when veteran staff step in and say, hey, let me show you how to do this. Hey, let me show you how I've survived in this career for 20 years so you don't leave. You know, all of those things are things that we're in control of and that we can help. But what people need to understand, and if you know, get anything out of what I say ever, and this is what I tell people, you have to understand that this job affects everybody differently. What's traumatic to one person may not be traumatic to the other person. And we have to, if it doesn't make sense to you, if it doesn't bother you and the job is, you know, great, you love it, nothing's ever affected you, then you have an obligation to help the people that are struggling with the job because you've got it all figured out, right? You've got no problems. You've got no side effects. Your third marriage is great. All these things are great, but you so then need to take that information that you're getting from outlets like this to then say, oh, hey, yeah, so-and-so's not doing so good. Maybe you should go check on them. You know, or yeah, okay, so this hanging doesn't bother me, but it bothers you. Maybe you should go talk to Joe. You know, those kind of things. And I think if we did that more, guys, that the culture that you talked about, we're trying to weave this wellness thing in the culture. I think that if people would just start stepping up and saying, hey, you know, that what you're saying is ignorant, you know, and we really just need to start being there for each other more. I think we'd be in a lot better place.
Man, he hit the nail on the head, didn't he?
Yeah.
So for the last probably 2 months, we've been planning this podcast, you know, something as simple as our name, but really for us is really important to have an overall mission, what we were going to cover, why, kind of our boundaries between us and administration. And the biggest thing that, Joe and I and John Brown, who's not here today, but kind of our silent producer, have talked about is we want to overcome that toxicity, which is really what you hit on, Will. This, administration is not doing this, somebody's not doing that. Well, we all work in really complicated systems, and there's never an instance where any one person can make our life that much better. But we often forego our own responsibility and how we can contribute to make whatever environment, whatever thing better. And by picking up, our fellow brothers and sisters and being there and starting there, let's do what we can and let's let go of what we don't have control over. So you hit the nail right on the head.
I have a question for you in regards to talking to a new officer who you said you have a nephew?
Yeah.
That's in the academy
just
right now?
Second week in the academy, third week.
Yeah. What advice would you say to that young officer who's getting ready to start in corrections in regards to preparing mentally for the job?
Preparing mentally for the job. I think that you need to look at the vets. I think you need to listen to the vets. I think you need to see where they're at. And then you need to look at why are they where they're at, and understand that, being in corrections requires a ton of self-reflection, right? Like, I have to be honest. I know I walk around and I puff my chest out and I'm strut through the day room and stuff, but what really is my limit? What are my triggers, and what can I handle mentally? And if I get to a point where I'm scared, if I get to a point where the job is adversely affecting me out of uniform, then I have to say, you know what, I can't. I don't know how to get past what I'm getting past. And let me tell you something that's crazy. I love it. I appreciate it. I want more of it. But it's also crazy to me. As I had an individual call me from Maine yesterday, Maine DOC, and they are on the job training, just a couple of weeks. They've made it through the academy. They're doing this. And they had some concerns, but they didn't feel like they could talk to the field training officer. They didn't feel like they could reach out to their training department, training lieutenants and stuff. So they had to call some guy in the middle of the country who they don't know from Adam to ask them that question. And although I'm incredibly honored to be a part of that person's correctional journey, how crazy is that person didn't feel safe enough and confident enough, welcome enough to reach out to the people that were in the same room wearing the same uniform as them. And so, we have to change that. But I got off in the weeds a little bit, Joe. I'm sorry. As a new correctional officer, mentally preparing yourself, be honest with yourself, be honest with the people around you and say, hey, look, I'm not okay with the things that I see. I'm not okay with, what just happened, and then talk through it. Let's talk through it. Let's make this a teaching moment. Let's not automatically say, well, maybe corrections isn't for you. Maybe you should go do something else, because honestly, corrections isn't for anybody. I had a partner a long time ago, 15 years ago, told me humans shouldn't be doing this job. And I'm like, whatever, dude. But here I am 18 years later, like, yeah, nobody should be working this job. It's crazy. But having that, just wanting to question things, like wanting to learn the information, wanting to learn the job, be prepared to do that. And also be prepared, Joe, you mentioned it earlier, to be overwhelmed, to be incredibly overwhelmed, to feel extreme isolation from inmates and staff. I mean, just, you will literally feel like you're on your own, and you will be drowning, and there's 100 things that have to happen right now. And I want people to be prepared for that, because that's not the case. That there will be another shift. There will be another day. Help is coming. You'll learn to prioritize. You'll learn how to do your way of jailing, of correcting, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But it is going to be a gigantic shit sandwich for the first few months. And that's just what it is. And be prepared for that. And soak it all in. listen to everything that the training instructors give you, watch videos, read books, talk to your vets, do all of that, soak it all in. But just know that it doesn't matter how much information we give you. You have to you have to find your own way. I mean, what Joe does, how Joe runs a unit, won't work for me. What I do may not work for Joe. Luke wouldn't be able to run a unit, but that's beside the point.
No, it would be clean. I'll tell you, it'd be clean, but that'd be not it.
I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, I think a lot of new staff fall into the trap of trying to emulate, trying to mirror the tough guys, the tough girls, like, ooh, I'm going to do that. And then but they can't because they don't have that skill set, because they don't have that time. They don't have that reputation. They don't have that rapport with the inmates, and they fall flat on their
really
face.
True to who they are, right? It's coming from a stance of compensation. I'm not being honest with myself that I feel inadequate to handle this situation, either because I'm intimidated or I don't have the experience or skill set. So I'm going to do what that guy does because he seems to be confident. And that guy's probably no more confident.
Yeah.
But
no, in fact, he's probably worse. He's probably broken too. He's doing things, just off muscle memory. But I tell people, you can learn stuff from the people that aren't doing things the right way too. I mean, you just say that I just don't like how they're doing it. But I remember working in the beginning, and I was looking at these officers. I'm like, man, these guys must have been here for years. They walk around the units. All the inmates know them. And so when I finally said, hey, how long have you guys been here? They're like 6 months. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So in 6 months, I should be good to go. I mean, it doesn't take long to establish yourself, but you have to establish yourself. You can't try to be, because I'm going to tell you what, there's going to be a day when you're on your own. There's going to be a day when that person ain't here, and you have to be able to carry yourself. And so find out who that person is. This person that I talked to on the phone, they said, well, maybe I was a little too friendly, and so I'm going to try to go the opposite way. I'm going to try to be, a ball breaker. And I'm like, well, don't do that either. Like, if that's not you, don't do that. I mean, I understand that you feel like you were a little too friendly, so just find the medium. Like, you don't try to be something you're not, because staff is going to see right through it, and the inmates are going to see right through it, and they're going to eat it up. They're going to, like Joe said, that fish is going to be bleeding, and they're going to come get you. So you just got to be true to yourself, man, and just be patient, and just expect it to be incredibly stressful and crazy for the first few months.
Yeah. One of the things, and Will, I don't know how long we have you. I want to be mindful of time. You're really busy.
I'm sorry I was late, guys.
And yeah, he was late. We'll talk about that later. But you know what? For you guys, for Illinois, I'll clear my schedule. Hang on.
Whoa! Clear my calendar. There you go. It's done. It's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I think we had done, so on the mental health side, we're involved in our annual cycle training. So all staff have to go through that once a year. And now we've added staff wellness to that, right? So making sure that we've got good people, those good leaders, not the toxic ones, coming in for that hour to give our spiel and telling everybody about it. And some of the best advice that I've heard, whether I've given or somebody else, is what you're saying. Be honest with yourself. Know what's driving your behaviors, right? If you're in the wrong places at the wrong time at work, hanging out with the wrong crews, you're straying from, committed relationships and doing this stuff. Why are you doing that? What's driving it?
Right.
Don't lie to yourself, right?
Right.
That's going to get you in a whole lot of trouble. And then finding that kind of veteran or that mentor. Sometimes that can be a little tricky to know, okay, who's the respected person for the right reasons, right? And then treating your career not as, okay, I got the job, I'm done, but as a career arc, right? I mean, you may be an officer your whole life, but there's still committees, respect, different housing units to get assigned to, different duties. Taking every day of that job seriously. If this is what you're going to do for your life, do it well. Do your best, learn, be the best at it. Don't just lay stagnant. Challenge yourself, and you'll probably get a lot more out of your job.
Yeah.
I agree.
Nicely said.
So the other thing we wanted to kind of ask you about, you say you're up to nothing, but you've flown to like 4 states, had all these layovers. But for the last month, I understand you've had a totally new role. we'd love to hear about that. And by the way, we're dying to come out and visit you sometime soon. Hopefully we can get that arranged. We want to see what you're doing, learn from you, share anything we can. And just, I'm kind of a prison nerd. I love to see other prisons and visit, just see how things operate, just so, I understand it all. But tell us what you've been doing.
Luke, I would love to bring you out. It would be my pleasure.
Just Luke?
As long as you didn't bring up Joe, here's the problem. The problem, Joe. You promised me about 8 months ago a T-shirt.
Hold on. It has not been 8 months.
It's been a long time, and
over exaggerating.
And here I am. I don't have my T-shirt. I don't have. You can see that I'm drinking out of my Missouri wellness bottle, Joe.
I like that bottle. That's a beautiful bottle.
And I've got this fantastic, gigantic patch from North Carolina. Gigantic shoulders on these people out in North Carolina. Yeah. What I don't have is anything from Joe. And so unless he came bearing gifts, Dr. Luke, I would appreciate it if you had a different carry-on.
Carry-on.
As you know,
well, I feel like he's been carrying it this whole show. I mean, I feel like
we'll let him carry my luggage. I don't do that myself, but
right.
We're working on getting some swag together. We don't, our budget. We're still figuring all that out with the podcast.
Oh, I know, staffing budget. I get it.
We are going to probably throw some of our own money in there. We've had some great people, friends, not even in corrections, but friends of ours that have done like the music intro for us. Brooke Crossshire, shout out, did an awesome beat, threw that together, just sick, and did it in no time. Super creative guy. He's got a podcast called the Sofa King Podcast. Play off of a curse word there. And then another friend of mine, Zach, he runs Studios In. He did some of the artwork. So we've made some kind of caricatures of the hair and the beard. We're hoping to put some swag together, kind of playing off of the gnome beard and the slick hair.
Right.
And when we get some of that together, you let us know your size. We'll send you something.
I already know his size.
He has my size. He has my address. He has everything. And yet he has done. In fact, you know what, Joe? You'd be a great administrator because you have told me. we got edit button on this thing. I'm just kidding.
Only the ones we love.
Oh my God!
I'm just kidding. So you asked me about my new role. I'm super excited about it. Let me tell you about that. Sometimes I get off into the weeds, guys. But my new role is staff wellness officer, and we have a huge need, and I think every facility needs to have a point person for wellness, and we didn't have one, and I had an idea. I had something that I was passionate about. And guys, this is something you can do too. If you have an idea, if you have something that you're on fire about and you're passionate about it and you've researched it and you've gone and you've figured out a way to implement it in your agency, take it to your agency, take it to your administration. They'll listen to you. They're always looking for ways to improve the prisons, to improve the facilities. And so that's what I did. And I said, hey, look.
You didn't go to work and fuss with coworkers about how bad things were and you wish somebody would do this for us and contributed to that toxic sludge crap. He said, you know what, I'm going to be a leader and I'm going to step up. I'm going to organize myself, educate myself. So I know I've got a passion idea, but I'm going to polish this thing up and then I'm going to deliver it to maybe some folks who can't help me do something with it.
I did. And I've authored 2 books. I've traveled all over the place. I've done, a ton of YouTube videos and podcasts and all that. And so I feel like I feel like my pitch was, hey, I've got all of these things that I'm working on. I've got all of these people that I'm talking to. Can I please do this at home? I want to help the people that I have been fighting with, that I have been struggling with. Some of the people that brought me up. The reason that I'm still a correctional officer, the reason that I'm able to reach out and touch and talk to all these correctional officers are because of the guys and gals that showed me how to do this job. And they said yes. They said, let's do it. It fits the need. We want it. And so I have been now put into this role where I am responsible for helping staff in my hometown, in my home facility, survive this career with their head, heart, and household intact. And that's what it's a dream job for me, man. It's, I love doing things like this. I love traveling and doing those things, but you never get any love in your own hometown. You never get any love in your own house. And the fact that my facility has enough trust in me to say, yeah, man, we need you to do what you do here, please, has been huge for me, man. And so now I am networking with fine gentlemen like yourself and other states, trying to build a program that I hope, I'm very excited that I'm the first, but I'm also catch myself finding out or thinking about who's going to be the person that I pass it to.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the person 25 years from now that is doing staff wellness, and what does the place look like from there? And so I'm very fortunate. I'm very honored, very humbled to be able to do this for my agency and for people all over the place. So it's been fun. It's been scary. We had our first, we had a suicide of an officer on my second day in my role. And it was like, okay, here's what's going on. We need you to go to work. And it was like, holy crap. Okay, this is what we do. But thankfully we had just trained a bunch of peers, and thankfully, we were able to navigate that situation the best that anybody could. And so it's been a whirlwind. It's like anything else in corrections. You have your plan laid out, and then you come in and the world says, no, that's not what's going to happen today.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's been good, man. And it's, like I said, it's my dream job, and I couldn't think of anything that I'd rather be doing.
Yeah. And these are all new waters, right? I mean, even though we've been at it 5 years here, and I know there's states that have been going a little bit longer than us. I think he's going to go, our door kicked open, and we're hearing some background noise, so he'll come back, I promise. Maybe not.
Okay. Well, either way.
It's new, right? And there's a lot of great ideas, and, you can't plant 20 seeds at once and expect them all to grow. And I think kind of what you're saying is maybe I'm going to focus on these three things, get these really well-established parts of the program. And then when it's time for me to retire, those things will have strong roots, and the next guy or gal can do another three things. So we've been through a couple different, kind of leaders, at the helm and in different regional spots that have all had great contributions. And then they've, different parts of their careers, they've retired, they've moved, or it just wasn't the right time with family. But they've left some kind of legacy, and then the next folks have kind of a different passion.
Yeah.
So in our, in our world, what do you see happening next for us, Joe?
I think the best thing we can do as staff wellness is what we've already talked about here so far, is just encouraging that negative energy, right? And just encouraging it to, how can we make that change within our facilities? Like what you're doing at your facility. You're making that change in your hometown with those people you work with every single day, right? It's something that just needs to happen on a statewide level, and that's what staff wellness is all about. Like I said in our intro, we ain't going nowhere. Staff wellness is here to stay. You ain't going nowhere. You're here to stay. And the best thing we can do in our roles right now is just remind people that you can make the change at your facility. You have the tools and the resources around you of overcoming that negative energy. And for me, that's been probably one of my hardest things that I've had to do, is just face it and be honest and acknowledge that there's so much negative stuff around, and just the environment that we work in. Sometimes we just feel like we're drowning. And I have to surround myself with people like you, with people like Bill, who help me at my lowest get out of those moments, right? That's, in my opinion, what staff wellness is here for, and what we can do on a statewide level Guaranteed.
It's interesting he brought up those moments because, I missed doing a podcast, but we got busy. We started the podcast when there wasn't as much to do. We couldn't travel as much, getting in and out of facilities. I don't want strangers in there. But it's just a great creative outlet, working with great people. So I missed doing it, but it really wasn't. I thought we were done. And then out of the blue, Jonathan Brown, who I've known for years, we did hostage training, some other stuff together. We've been at some of the same facilities. And again, that's the importance of keeping up those relationships. You meet somebody cool, you meet one of those mentors, those leaders, keep the phone calls, the emails going, check in with each other every month because, man, those bridges will last forever if you just do a little bit of maintenance on them. He called out of the blue one day, Fairless, what are you up to? Well, I'm just busy doing that. And I was at a part, one of those moments where I was feeling overwhelmed. We had a lot of work. We're low staff here. We got, insurmountable challenges. There's stuff going on in court, just all this stuff. Home life's busy, trying to manage it all, really feeling like one thread's pulled out, that's all gone, up late, taking calls, doing all this stuff. And, there wasn't a ton of easily accessible positive stuff at work. But John Brown called. I got to meet Joe. And it's like, this is the medicine that I needed, right? These guys, these putting our positive energy back in there. And then quite quickly, I remembered, this is a pretty darn good job. I've got good health insurance. I've never been paid late. I meet some amazing people. And I tell you, this is not blowing smoke. The relationships that I make at work are the single most important thing to my heart and the thing that keeps me going. So when I go into a facility, because I travel to at least 12 and I've been to all of our facilities, seeing somebody I had a class with, seeing somebody I used to work with, seeing somebody I've talked on the phone with, that makes my day and my week, and just seeing a positive smile, being that positive person for them and vice versa. So this podcast came at kind of the right moment to remind me, I've got some good bosses. I've got a good job. My bosses kind of let me do some creative things and grow. They're supportive. They're good at giving feedback. I am surrounded by excellent teams on staff wellness of people who are passionate about what they do. Our other folks in mental health and then our security. There's great people all around me, and I'm getting caught up in this little, there's one bad pepperoni on that whole pizza, and I'm going to let that ruin the whole pizza.
Bill actually invited me onto his podcast for the first time.
Right.
And
Mistake.
I remember
And
that.
did people listen to that?
Probably not.
Yeah, it was my worst viewing podcast ever.
Thank you.
Hey, nowhere to go but up. Let's be positive. Let's not get in the toxic.
And so, talking with him, obviously I was horrified and nervous because I've read his book 1,000 times.
He's kind of a legend. He acts like an everyday normal guy. He's published 2 books. He's speaking in other states. And, people don't always want to listen to other people in corrections. So if they're listening to you, they must believe some of the hype.
But for me, it was I was at my lowest moment when I read and picked up his book for the first time in corrections. And I've told him that before. And I told my wife, he sent me a message. It was on a social media site. He sent me a message saying, hey, let's talk. Here's my number. I instantly called my wife. And I go, hey, dude wants to talk. We're going to have a talk in a little bit. And
you went all fanboy on him, didn't you? You went all fanboy.
No, because for me, we talk about having mentors. We talk about having people in our lives who kind of help keep us on that path when it comes to checking on our mental health.
Yeah.
And, we try to text and or call as much as we can with your schedule, with my schedule. And our friendship has just grown out of that. And for me, when John asked if I want to do the podcast, I've called him. He talks about the late night calls he's gotten. It's probably because of me, because he handles a lot of the mental health stuff. And so normally when we make those phone calls, we call Luke. And I never got to meet him. So when I finally got to meet Luke, John told me that, hey, what about you two on a podcast together? The first thing I said was, we can get William Young. Right on.
That was the first idea both of us had.
Yeah.
Because I know we'd had you before when Stephanie and I were doing the Lockdown podcast. And he told me about your new role. I'm like, what better time?
No, it's perfect. Yeah.
Right.
So I think everything you asked the future of staff wellness. For me, it is using resources that we have available, like Bill, and like other people who can be that voice and to reach out and talk to staff. Like that is staff wellness. Not only what we're doing, what the other teams are doing, and what people in other states are doing as well. And Young, I mean, I'm glad you're on the show today, man. It's been great.
It's powerful. I mean, you know, maybe you can't pick it up if you're listening. Maybe you can if you're watching after we get this out. But I mean, you can tell Joe really had a physiological, we call like a recognition reflex in the biz, right? From your book, that several ahas, like probably felt it in this whole, but this guy, this is me. Nobody has understood.
Right.
I can't even speak, you know, I'm so overwhelmed. This guy gets it. And then to be able to kind of reach out to you for feedback and to go back and forth on those ideas, that's just amazing. But I think a lot of people in corrections are like that. They're so willing to help. Right. You know, most people will pick up that phone in corrections.
Yeah.
I will say this, and this is something that I've come into contact with my new role, and Joe, you kind of just touched on this too. People are like, "Hey, congratulations, Bill. I hope you are successful." And I said, "Well, this is not about me being successful. This is about, you know, I'm only going to be successful if you help me do this job. Yeah. Like if I put something out there, if we put a resource out there, I put something together for you and you don't use it, that's not my fault. That's you." And so when you talk about the you know, the future of staff wellness, when you talk about the success of these programs and these podcasts and the books and all these things, it has really nothing to do with us. It's are you willing to participate in your own recovery? Are you willing to, because everybody has a part to play. It's just like security, right? Everybody has a part to play in daily security. It doesn't matter where you work, what department you work. If you walk into a correctional facility, security is your responsibility. You can't leave your pin behind, your screwdriver behind. You have to be mindful of where you are. It's no different when it comes to mental wellness. Everybody has a role to play in the morale. Everybody has a role to play in the tone of the facility, and everybody has an obligation to check on each other and to make sure everybody is doing fine. If you guys are sitting waiting for your administrators to come and make sure you're okay, if you think that staff wellness solely rests on the shoulders of one or two individuals in your facility or in your state, you're sadly mistaken, and you're going to miss out on some fantastic opportunities to engage and to talk with staff and to meet some really cool people. And honestly, you know, this movement, these things that we're talking about, is not about, for me, retention. It's not about, you know, our free hot dogs at Staff Appreciation Day. All those, they're really good. They do like the all beef ones, and but for me, it's saving the lives of the men and women that work in this profession. It's about making sure that your marriage stays together and that you have a healthy relationship with your kids, and that the things that you see, the heroic things that you do for your community, in service of your community, and the sacrifices that you're making do not go in vain. Like, we want to make sure that you have the help to be okay when you leave this place, when you leave this career, so you can go and enjoy the peace that you deserve for all these years of public service. And that, for me, that's what it's about. And I know Luke and Joe, you guys are just as passionate about it. But it's important to know that everybody plays a role. I mean, I can beat the drum all day long. Joe, you can beat the drum, Luke. But if these people aren't helping, if they're not participating, if they're not saying, you know what, this is a good job, this is a great job, this is a fantastic job where you get to interact with people that society has thrown away, that they said, you know what, we don't want anything to do with these people, and you can plant seeds, you can have interactions, you can change the trajectory of people's lives based on your interactions. And then you do some pretty cool things too. Plus, it's pandemic-proof, recession-proof profession. You know, this place.
I hate to say no job's essential. My personal opinion is, unless you're just inherently wealthy, every job, every environment's essential. But we don't close. Our joke was when somebody doesn't answer the phone at one of the prisons, I guess they're closed today. No, we don't get to do that. Right? So we're there But to your
Right.
point, to Joe's point, because we'll want to kind of close up shop to get you out of here. Staff wellness, it's not something that we do to other people. Now, we do want the staff wellness programming, the rules, the policies to be woven organically into the fabric. So when we think about writing an incident report, we also think about time to get well, time to do those activities, time to take care of yourself. But more so, I think we will know that we're successful as a whole when it becomes a mindset. Right? When we adopt that mindset,
Right.
that our leaders don't just say, time to suit up for TAC. This is how we go in and get somebody out. This is how we keep ourselves safe. They also need, you know what? This is time we check on our folks. It's time I show other people my vulnerability and ask for help in front of those new guys so they know that me, a vet of 12 years, is struggling. And not only is it not okay to get help, that's what you should be doing. That's what a hero does. That's what a grown man or grown woman does, is ask for help. So I think we're making our way there. Certainly as we do rounds and stuff, we're getting more and more people who are a little bit more willing to talk. And certainly nobody is unhappy we're there. They're happy that we're there. Some people may be, adapting pretty well, but we're starting to open up a little bit more. Yep. I'd like to see us just do more rounds, even for non-critical incidents, just so they know names, faces. So when something does happen, that engagement's a little bit easier. You're not starting from zero. So I'd like to see our folks at sites. We have a half dozen people at most sites who, have the staff wellness badge, so to speak, to do kind of more frequent roundings once or twice a year, just to check on the atmosphere of their folks and build that into the climate. That's what I want to see. That's all I got. You want to take us home?
Bill, buddy, thanks for joining us today,
sir.
man.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
If he's got your address, we're going to work on some swag. It'll be a little bit, but maybe in about a month we'll have a few T-shirts made. I'm sure you're like a Schmedium. We'll send you one out to Nebraska.
Yeah. Nobody in Nebraska wears this medium, buddy. No,
we're not much better in Illinois. We got a lot of corn here too.
That's right. That's right. Can I plug my channel? Is that cool?
Plug your channel, your books, plug it all.
If you guys get the opportunity to jump onto YouTube, Just Corrections with William Young, you can just put in the search bar Just Corrections and it'll pull it up. Subscribe, comment on the videos, interact with each other, leave comments. I respond to all of them. I'm on Facebook as well. And then both my books are available on Amazon, When Home Becomes a Housing Unit and The Nothing That Never Happened. And both of them detail and talk about how this job affects us outside out of uniform. It's not just a bunch of stuff about, prison fights and all that. It's the mental aspect of the thing. So check those out if you get a chance. And if you have any questions or comments, justcorrections@gmail.com. Let's talk. Let's meet. If you have a situation that I can't handle over email, I'll shoot you my phone number. We'll talk about it on a Saturday afternoon or something. So
nice.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Up when we edit this podcast, so hopefully it'll be one of those bars below. And when we do kind of our email blast and our Facebook and social media stuff, we'll be sure to throw some links up. And it's not because we're pushing somebody else's stuff. We get nothing from this. It's not.
It's a resource. At the end of the day, it's a resource for staff.
We've already got tons of people who like this stuff. It makes sense. Anytime we find something good, it's always great to share. So we're going to throw that up for everybody. Yep. And please check it out. And guys, our next podcast, we're doing it in a few days. You may not see it for a few weeks. We're going to be meeting with the director and kind of talking about the future of our department, the future of podcasts, and just getting to know him a little bit better. And I'm not going to release the next special guest, but we got a big one coming on for podcast number 4. A big one. So
I'm a little torn between that one, but I mean,
So we'll leave some little hints next time.
Go Reds. That's all I'm going to say is go.
Is it polite to talk up the big guest in front of a current guest? Is that proper etiquette?
Well,
I said go Reds, Bill.
I thought your headphones were off.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was supposed to sign off already.
Listen,
this guest was okay, but next week
you thought
that guest.
Will Young's here. This guy's like here, maybe here. Listen, when you hear this guest, you'll understand why. And all right, Fairless, I get it.
I don't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry.
Well,
man.
thanks for making me feel like crap. I appreciate it. Thanks,
No,
Illinois. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
We got to come out and see you. We're going to be on the hook. We got to come out and see you soon. Your winters probably suck as much as ours, so.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So any season's good to travel for us. So we'll talk to you
That's
soon,
right.
Bill. Thank you so much for coming on. We wish you all the luck, folks. Check out his Just for Corrections YouTube. Just for Corrections at Gmail.
Just corrections. Just corrections, Luke. Not only did you talk about the other guest, you're screwing up my contact info.
A lot of edits. A lot of edits. Just Corrections with William Young. When the home becomes a housing unit, the nothing that ever happened. Everyone, thanks for joining us, watching us, listening to us. Bill, I love you. Can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Love you too, brother.
Sorry, we'll get it right. We'll get it right on the link. The link's right
All
here
right.
between my hands. It'll be right there.
Later, guys.
Yeah.